Welcome to Prelude to Ulysses. This is Alex who reads Ancient Evenings. We're at part 11. It's been a while since I read it. I think that after a nice weird dinner, Kamusha came up to the Pharaoh and was like, "Bro, we gotta talk about this stuff." And the Pharaoh's like, "What, man?" And he's like, "The unions!" or something, right? And the Pharaoh's like, "I don't give a shit. It's the night of the pig. Tell everybody about the unions." Oh yeah, these dudes they're going on strike because they don't have food, and the Pharaoh's like, "Give them food," and Kamusha's like, "What? No, then they'll want more food." This will be a short one. Thank goodness, right? Everything takes so long. Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe I will drink a little honey. I wonder if I've just been using tea as a vehicle to get this local hive honey into my mouth. You don't need tea to do that. You can just do it. Yeah, I'm not going to show you the board this time. It's just different this time. Everything's different today. Not in a good way. Just different. Get used to it or don't. Nothing lasts forever. Everything's the same thing. What? I'm making deep comments. Remember, this isn't that one. You just read with this one. 2 minutes of that? Well, dear listener, feel free to edit out the last 2 minutes of your life if you'd like. Part 11. While he was gone, so the Pharaoh went off to talk to Kamusha about something that is actually private. Kamusha was like, "Oh, I got to talk with you in private." And the Pharaoh's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Everyone, it's Night of the Pig, where we all act like a pig. Everyone knows everything. Doesn't matter." And he's like, "No, buddy, I got to tell you." And he whispered in his ear. Maybe he licked his earlobe a little bit. And then the Pharaoh's like, "Oh, baby, let's go." While he was gone, my parents did not speak, nor did Menenhedet utter a sound. A tupor came over me. I'm not going to look it up. Tupor. Torpor? Torpor? Torpor came over me, full of the taste of the pig. Stuffed and a little confused by what had just taken place, I felt close to sleep, like a bruise whose pain turns at last into tenderness. I was ready to receive my mother, to forgive my mother. Maybe it was the golden light of the last candles reflecting in my gold goblet. But I soon began to mystify myself with the loveliness of the thought that the light in this room once lived in an abode of honey. For my mother had told me that the wax to make these candles came from the beehives of the Pharaoh. By such a light, I looked again at my parents, especially at the beauty of my mother, and I thought I had never witnessed as many faces within her as I glimpsed tonight. Steeped in their thoughts, my heart now felt as mellow as any 50-year-old. And I was so filled with cynicism, the first time ever to feel such superiority, that I had to smile at how my mother, when at home, showed little of whatever tact she offered tonight. Alone among us, she would display no respect nor patience when speaking to my father. Whatever was her own mood became the mood of our house. Her bad humors, quite the equal, as I say, of any black servant, used to leave me with the feeling that the day had grown intolerably hot. I used to believe that she had the power to affect our weather. After long burning afternoons, her bad humor, if atrocious enough, was ready to spoil the sunset, and I remember suffocating evenings when the last clouds were black over the western hills. Nice. When Menenhedet was present, however, another side of my mother would come forth. She could look as demure then as a girl of 18, and I did not feel like her son so much as her younger brother. Both of us there to worship Menenhedet. Or so I used to think, until the glimpse of them together last night, which, if taken with her boldness tonight, made me think with some fear. She has given everything to raising me, but now she wants more for herself. I was also aware that our pharaoh had been gone too long. My family was stirring uneasily. Just before the sight of his empty seat would just before the sight of his empty seat would most definitely spoil the pleasure of the evening, he came back, but in a peculiar state. I felt much unhappiness in him. Yet he was bright in his manner and more feverish than before. At once he made a sign with his hands to the servants, and 4 Syrians brought us gifts. A headrest of silver was given to my father, and Menenhedit received a small doll, carved in ivory, of a man dressed in fine linen. When one pressed the hips of this gift, as my great-grandfather soon did, a pale yellow phallus stood up, at which my father giggled uncontrollably, for it had a red painted tip. My mother was presented a grasshopper made of colored glass, and the head, which had 2 small rubies for eyes, was removable. Now the loveliest odor of perfume wafted forth. "Do not open it," said Ta-Nem-Otep, "for soon we will leave this room. Save it, I implore you, to sweeten the air of the next." "Oh dear, the boy," he said, and made a gesture with his hand, as if he had forgotten me, but of course he hadn't. And the servants brought out a fine small box in which rested the 2 pieces of black copper from heaven. "Oh, cool!" I was so delighted I forgot everything at once in playing with my bars, and their pull seemed more mysterious than before. Indeed, when I closed my eyes, I could no longer know for certain what was up and down. So strangely were my hands drawn about. Ta-Nem-Otep looked then at my great-grandfather and said, "Explain this wonder to me." "I have seen nothing like it before," said Menenhedit. "This is not a piece of amber to draw to itself a few snips of cloth, nor is it the charm of one eye upon another. This attraction has true weight. Would you suppose," asked our pharaoh, "that there is desire in one piece of metal for the other?" "I would say it is more than desire, and like a bend in the nature of things." I could hear the curiosity in Ta-Nem-Otep's voice when he replied, "Where would you find this bend? In the river? In the sky?" "I would be so bold as to speak of a bend in the passage of time," my great-grandfather murmured. "I do not know what you mean. One could speak as easily of a knot or a cramp. Perhaps, dear doctor, do you mean an inflammation of time?" I wished to cry out to the pharaoh, "Do not mock my great-grandfather, or harm will come to all of us," but I did not dare. Menenhedit, however, was as powerful as Menenhedit, however, was as powerful as stone in the force of his silence. Only when all of us were looking at him would he speak. I wonder if such an attraction is not a summons from the past that calls upon the future? Ta-Nem-Otep touched his tail most delicately to the table. "Fine," he said. "Wonderful. Each of us must know one eye of Horus. Between us, we ought to find the truth. For I would say, all that is yet to come may be weighing upon what has passed." He nodded. He exhaled his breath. He stood up. We stood up. Our feast was over. The servants led us out of the dining room, up some marble stairs, across many fountains and palms to a covered patio, on which were sofas to recline. At the commencement of our view stood pillars of marble as noble as any on the facade of a temple. And beyond were the buildings of the palace, and many courtyards and gardens and walls, and even a view of the river. I was so intent on what could be glimpsed in the distance that I hardly noticed how the servants had begun to bring in, one by one, a number of small covered boxes, set on stands, and about the Pharaoh nodded, and the Pharaoh nodded as each was set in place. I had learned enough about Ta-Nem-Hotep to know that a marvel you could encounter only in his presence was soon to be revealed. As the last torch was extinguished, each of the 8 blacks came to stand by each of the 8 blacks came to stand by one of the hooded cages. In the darkness, we were unable to see each other's faces. Now Ta-Nem-Hotep clicked his tongue, and on that sound, the hoods were removed. The darkness began to glow. Slowly, we could see what he had prepared. Each cage was covered in a transparent linen. From the interior, behind each veil, appears the lights of little stars who flitted back and forth, a myriad of lights in every cage. We gasped in pleasure and applauded. What untold difficulty to capture so many hundreds of fireflies! How soft were the features of my mother by such a light, and oh, the wealth of her love! We sat in a darkness lit by golden stars. Dude, that's cool. I needed that. I had a bad day. Besides the gross shit, this is such a lovely book. It's just, I don't know. Such sweet sentences. I just feel like there's a lot of love here for the subject matter from the author. There's a real consistency to his like poetic drawl, but like still remaining pretty well confined within the head of a child, or the adult that he was in, minorly violent, or even when he was kind of just speaking in the third person, discussing the tales of the gods, which I kind of forgot that part. There is a constant voice, right? And I don't view it as Norman Mailer's voice. I kind of view it as like a voice of this time. I just think he's doing a really great job. I love this book. It's really pretty. Oh man, I'm just looking through it right now. Don't worry, there's a lot more to come. So the next book's called Book of the Charioteer. So the first book was the Book of One Man Dead. Depressed, I just need a little rest. Am I about fall asleep? Am I depressed, or do I just need some pot stickers? Am I sad, or do I just need to quit sleeping on the sofa, sleep in my bed? It's part of the song, don't worry about it. Do you want to hear me tune my guitar 15 times in one song? Probably not, but here we are anyway. Kitty cat. Nothing's real. We're not really here. Or maybe we are. That song, Am I Depressed or Blank? It's actually like 75 lyrics long. And you just think of stuff. But I kind of got distracted. See, like, am I depressed, or do I just got a brain tumor? Am I depressed, or was it the Cocoa Pebbles? Am I depressed, or did I just read the Odyssey before the Iliad? Am I depressed, or am I just an idiot? Am I depressed, or did I just see 4 woodpeckers at the same time? Am I depressed, or do I need glasses? Am I sad? Am I mad? Am I angry? What's the difference? I was smiling at the furnace. You know, I've been trying to keep this channel much less like this, or this one book I'm reading. I don't know if I've explained that. Maybe I haven't. Maybe these are all terrible like this. Bye. Love